Hey crafters, thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to make a magic iris card that's also a shaker card. Hope you enjoy! So the first thing I did is I took a piece of card that's a little bit larger than my main die. And this is from the Magic Iris Tropical Leaves add-on set. And I'm going to use some distress ink, this is Twisted Citron, to color my card. Now you could use more than one color if you like here, but I'm going to die cut it first and then add some more ink on top. Now I'm also going to die cut using some Lawn Fawn acetate and a little bit of fun foam, which will add some dimension. Now the Lawn Fawn acetate stays together when you die cut it, so I did have to cut the outside of it with my scissors, but it's worth all the effort, as you'll see shortly. So I'm going to use some bundled sage just to add a little bit of texture to this beautiful magic iris shape. And I'm using my finger dauber, and that makes it a lot easier applying ink to a smaller area. So once I'm happy with the shading on this wreath, I'm going to start to put together my shaker card. So I put some glue on the back of this, and I'm going to use that Lawn Fawn acetate shape that I cut earlier. I'm going to place this on the back, and you'll notice that the inside ring is still attached. And that's because I didn't use any shim on my die cutting machine, so it's still all in one piece. So once this is lined up, then I'm going to add on the next piece of my shaker card, and that will be the fun foam. And I'll make sure that it's all nicely connected there. And then I'll just put something heavy on it for a few moments so the glue has a chance to set. Once that's set, I'm going to add the inside of my shaker element, some little sparkly crystals that I have, and then I'll glue on another acetate wreath to the back of this shaker card. And then I'll set this aside to dry as well. Now while this glue is setting, I'm going to move on to some more ink blending. So I'm using a piece of card that's slightly bigger than the Magic Iris add-on die, and I'm going to use 3 different shades of pink. These are all distress inks. So I'm going to use some spun sugar, some Kitsch Flamingo, and picked raspberries. And I'm just putting this all over the card in random splotches. And it doesn't matter that this isn't ink blended. I'm just putting the colors down on the card, and you'll see how this comes into play in a moment. Now once I'm happy with where all that pink is on the card, and I have a good amount of each of the 3 colors, then I'm going to use my heat tool and make sure that these inks are nice and dry. Then I'm going to use a stamp from the Toucan Do It stamp set, actually 2 of the stamps, the 2 little flowers, and I'm going to stamp them with the Versamark ink. Now I'm stamping these flowers randomly over the card just to make sure they're on all of those splotches on the background. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to use some clear embossing powder and put the clear embossing powder over the whole background. And then I'll use my heat tool and heat set that clear embossing powder. And now you can see those flowers over the background. And then once that's all nice and heat set, I'm going to use some distress ink in a darker color. So this is Candied Apple, and I'll put it over the entire background. And the reason I did this is because you'll see you get this really neat effect where the color underneath peeks through the darker color. Because you've added the clear embossing powder on top of it, you can see the lighter color underneath. So it creates this really fun background for our card. Just gorgeous. Now once I'm happy with that, I'm going to die cut the Magic Iris add-on die out of that. And I'm also going to die cut 3 of the sausage pieces for the Magic Iris mechanism with the same technique. Now inside the Magic Iris mechanism, we're going to use some stamps from the Toucan Do It stamp set. So I'm going to stamp one of the toucans, and then I'll use some of those tropical leaves around him. And I want him to be sitting on a branch, but instead of masking off this stamped area, I'm just going to apply ink to my stamp and wipe it off with my thumb so that the area underneath the toucan is left blank, so it looks like he's sitting on the branch. I'm also going to stamp another toucan for the front of the card with the same stamp set and the sentiment. So this one says, "Here's a toucan of my appreciation," and the other one says, "Thank you." Then I'll just cut these sentiments out and add a little bit of color to them with some antique linen distress ink, just around the outsides to make it a little bit more interesting than white. Now to further decorate the front of my card, I'm going to use some flowers and leaves from the Magic Iris Tropical Leaves add-on die set. So I'm just going to use the Picked Raspberry and Kitsch Flamingo inks again on a little piece of card that I can die cut with these tiny dies. And I just place the dies on top there so you can see what colors I'm using for what shapes. And then I will use some of that bundled sage for the leaves as well. Now the insides of the flowers, I'm going to use some antique linen. And once this is finished, I'll die cut these off camera. Now for the flowers, I added a little bit of unicorn stickles on the inside, and this helps to keep the inside piece of the flower attached because the stickles dry like glue. And it also adds the stamen, the yellow piece of the flower. And then once I've attached them, I'm going to add some more stickles on the top so that they dry nice and sparkly. So now I'm going to put together my Magic Iris mechanism, and I'm going to put those 3 sausage pieces into the ring and add some glue dots like Lawn Fawn recommends on those little X's. And then I can add my second ring on top. Once that's secure, I'm going to flip it over and then use some double-sided tape on the 3 lines where the long rectangle pieces go. Now before I attach the third wheel, I like to test my mechanism to make sure that it's working. And if you find that your glue dots are tiny, it works quite well, but if you do have bigger ones, it can jam the mechanism. So I like to make sure before I put the whole thing together. And then I'm going to add on the little handle there. And then once that's secure, I can add the third ring and my Magic Iris is complete. And I'll just check the mechanism again to make sure it works. So now I'm going to put the card together. So I've got my 2 little toucans, my shaker element, my Magic Iris, and the cover plate. And I'm going to use a piece of paper from the Really Rainbow Lawn Fawn card set for the background. So I'm going to add my toucan first, and I'm put him in the middle of that Magic Iris add-on die and make sure that's centered. And then I can add on my Magic Iris mechanism. Once that's secure, I can add on the cover plate. And I'm going to use some foam squares to adhere this. So I like to put them around the Magic Iris as well as on the cover plate. Then I can start putting everything else together. So I'll add on the shaker element there, just where I'd like it to be, and the 2 sentiments and the rest of the decorations for the front of the card. And once I'm happy with where everything is, I'll glue them into place before adding this to my card base. Now there's something about that red and green combination on this card that helps to make it look a bit more tropical. Now I'm going to add this to a card base. Now this is slightly smaller than a 5x7 card base, so I just trimmed it down. It's about 5x6. And then I'm going to use some of those leftover flowers on the inside of the card. And I was going to add a few, but I thought it would look good with just the 1 flower and then another little toucan. So I just stamped and colored another toucan, and I'll just add him on the inside of the card as well here. Now you may have noticed that I did forget one tiny thing. On the front of the card, I forgot to add the extra little lever from the Magic Iris add-on die. So I'm going to just glue that on top of the normal Magic Iris lever. And then once it's secured, I'll just try and trim the white one underneath. But it's a good idea if you're doing this that you add that on before you've attached the cover plate. It's a little bit easier that way. So here's the finished card, and you can see the shaker element as well as the Magic Iris element. And then the inside of the card as well has an extra little toucan to make it even more special for the recipient. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found this video inspiring. Be sure to subscribe so that you're notified whenever I post a new video. Have a crafty day!